The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder and blood. Jake Brennan pressed his back against the adobe wall of Rosa's cantina pistol hot in his grip. Beside him, Kaya Redfeather nocked another arrow, her breathing steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Through the shattered window he could see Virgil's men spreading through Socorro's main street. 5 guns against 2. And somewhere behind those guns, a man who shared Jake's blood, but wanted him dead. "We need to move," Kaya whispered. "Now." "The cellar," Jake said. "Rosa showed you the way out." A bullet cracked through the wood above their heads, spraying splinters. "Why are you still here?" Kaya asked suddenly. Her eyes met his in the dim light. "You could have run, left me, saved yourself." Jake did not answer immediately. His eyes tracked the shadows moving outside, calculating distances, measuring threats. "Because it has been a long time," he finally said, "since I had something worth fighting for." The words hung in the air between them. Heavy. True. This is how it all began. 4 days earlier. The desert stretched endless under the August sun, a sea of red rock and dust that swallowed hope as easily as it swallowed water. Heat rose in shimmering waves, turning the distant mesas into ghosts that danced on the horizon. This was Arizona territory in 1883, a land where the weak died and the strong merely survived, a land where mercy was rarer than rain. Jake Brennan rode alone through this furnace. He sat tall in the saddle despite 3 days without proper sleep. His horse, a bay gelding named Dust, picked its way across the cracked earth with the patience of an animal that had learned to endure. The Winchester rifle across Jake's lap was loaded, always loaded, because a man on the run could not afford the luxury of hesitation. 49 years old, former Texas Ranger, current fugitive. The words rolled through his mind like tumbleweeds catching on the sharp edges of memory before blowing on to nowhere. 6 months of running had carved new lines into his weathered face. 6 months of looking over his shoulder. 6 months of sleeping with one eye open and his hand on his gun. Behind him, somewhere in the dust and distance, men with legal authority hunted him like an animal. Ahead lay only more desert, more hiding, more of this half-life that was not really living at all. Jake pulled his hat lower against the punishing sun and tried not to think about Tombstone, tried not to remember the day everything changed. But memory was a relentless pursuer, faster than any bounty hunter, more persistent than any posse. Sheriff Thomas Wade reaching for his gun, the split-second decision, the shot that ended Wade's life and shattered Jake's own. Murder, they called it. The wanted posters said dead or alive. $3,000 for a man who had only tried to do right. $3,000 for a former lawman who had discovered that the law itself was rotten. Wade had been dirty. Jake knew that now with the certainty of hard evidence and harder experience. The sheriff had been on Luther Blackwood's payroll for years, helping the land baron steal territory through forged deeds and convenient deaths. Jake had confronted him, tried to arrest him proper the way a ranger should. Wade drew first, but Blackwood owned Judge Morrison, and the judge had made sure Jake never got to tell his side. Guilty verdict before he even testified. His own statement barred as evidence. Hanging scheduled for dawn. Jake broke out the night before. Killed a deputy in the process. Self-defense again, but who would believe him now? So he ran, and kept running until the running became its own kind of prison. His canteen was nearly empty. He would need to find water soon or start making hard choices about which direction to push. The map in his head said there was a spring somewhere near Red Rock Mesa, maybe 10 miles northwest, if memory served. If the spring had not dried up in this brutal summer heat. Jake adjusted his course slightly, angling toward the distant mesa that shimmered like a mirage on the horizon. Dust snorted and shook his mane, sensing his rider's unease. Good horse, smart horse, the kind of animal that could feel trouble coming before a man's conscious mind caught up. That was when Jake heard the scream. It cut through the afternoon stillness like a blade, high and raw, echoing off the canyon walls with a desperation that bypassed thought and went straight to instinct. Jake's hand was on his rifle before his mind could process what he was hearing. Every survival instinct he possessed screamed at him to keep riding, stay invisible, live another day. But something deeper stirred, something that 6 months of running had not managed to kill, something that remembered why he had become a ranger in the first place. Another scream, closer now, more desperate. Jake swore under his breath and kicked dust toward the sound. The horse surged forward without hesitation, plunging down a rocky slope toward the gash in the earth known as Devil's Throat Canyon. Dust billowed behind them as they descended. Shadows pooled in the narrow passage like spilled ink, offering relief from the sun, but no comfort for the soul. The canyon opened into a small clearing, and Jake saw her. The Apache woman stood with her back against a towering boulder, making her last stand against 3 gray wolves that circled her with patient hunger. She was young, maybe mid-20s, strong-featured with dark hair pulled back in a single braid that had come partially undone during the fight. Blood ran down her left arm from a deep gash in her shoulder, but her eyes held no fear. Only rage, only fire. She gripped a broken piece of cactus spine like a knife slashing at the nearest wolf each time it ventured too close. One animal already lay dead at her feet, its throat torn open by what must have been her hunting knife before the blade snapped. She had already won 1 fight, but 3 against 1 wounded and weaponless, save for a piece of plant. The math was simple and cruel. Jake did not think. His rifle came up smooth as breathing the motion so practiced it required no conscious effort. The first shot cracked the silence of the canyon, and the lead wolf dropped mid-leap, dead before it hit the ground. The other 2 spun toward him, snarling yellow teeth bared. For a heartbeat, Jake saw the calculation in their eyes. New threat, bigger threat. The second wolf charged. Jake worked the Winchester's lever, chambered another round fired. The animal twisted in midair, a red flower blooming on its side, and fell in a heap of gray fur and twitching limbs. But the third was already moving, low and fast, coming at him from the side where the boulder created a blind spot. Wolves were smart. Wolves understood tactics. The woman shouted something in Apache. Jake dove left as the wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air where his throat had been. He hit the ground hard-rolled, brought the rifle up, but the wolf was faster, already turning, already bunching its muscles to leap. A rock the size of a fist struck the animal's skull with a wet crack. The woman had thrown it, and now she was moving, limping forward with that broken cactus spine raised like a sword. The wolf turned toward her confused, shaking its head against the pain. Jake took the shot. The canyon rang with the echo. Then silence, deep and sudden. 3 dead wolves, 2 people breathing hard. The woman and Jake stared at each other across 10 feet of blood-stained earth. Up close, she was younger than he had first thought, maybe 25, 26. Her features were strong, almost regal, with high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see straight through him. The wound on her arm looked bad, deep and ragged from a wolf's claw, but not immediately fatal. What struck him most was the way she held herself. Even now, bleeding and exhausted, she stood straight, chin up, ready to fight again if necessary. No victim here, no damsel waiting for rescue. Jake slowly lowered his rifle, showing his empty hands in a gesture of peace. "You hurt." She studied him for a long moment before answering, taking his measure the way a general might assess a battlefield. "I have had worse." Her English was perfect, only slightly accented. Educated, Jake realized. Unusual for any woman in this territory, Apache or otherwise. "I am Jake." "Kaya." She lowered her improvised weapon slightly but did not release it. Smart. "Kaya Redfeather." "Well, Kaya Redfeather." Jake let a small smile touch his lips despite the circumstances. "You throw a good rock." Something that might have been humor flickered in her eyes. Then she swayed slightly, catching herself against the boulder as the blood loss began to take its toll. Jake moved forward slowly, making no sudden movements. "Let me look at that arm." She hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. Up close he could see the wound clearly. A clean tear, probably from a wolf's claw during the first attack when she killed the pack leader. Painful, but manageable if treated quickly. He pulled off his bandana, and when that proved too small, tore a strip from his own shirt sleeve. His hands were gentle as he wrapped the cloth around her arm. The movements came automatically muscle memory from years of ranger training when patching up wounded men in the field was as common as breathing. "You have done this before," Kaya said, watching his face rather than his hands. "Ranger training, long time ago." He pulled the knot tight but not too tight, then stepped back to give her space, reached for his canteen and offered it to her. She took it without hesitation, drank deep, then handed it back. Only then did Jake allow himself a drink. The water was warm and tasted of dust, but it was wet. They stood there in the clearing surrounded by dead wolves, and for the first time in 3 days Jake felt something other than fear and exhaustion. "You always save women from wolves?" Kaya asked. "Only on Thursdays." He pulled a piece of jerky from his pack, tore it in half, offered her the larger piece. "Today is my lucky day." She took the jerky, and he saw the corner of her mouth lift. Not quite a smile, but close. The sound of her quiet laugh was like water in the desert. Unexpected, precious. "Mine too, apparently." They chewed in silence for a moment. Jake found himself studying her. The way she sat alert even while resting. The way her eyes constantly scanned the canyon rim. Warrior habits. Survivor instincts. "What is a ranger doing running alone in Apache territory?" Kaya asked. Jake felt the old weight settle on his shoulders, the burden he carried everywhere he went. Not a ranger anymore. Things changed. She did not press, did not ask what things or how they changed. That small act of respect, of understanding that some stories needed time to be told, hit Jake harder than he expected. For 6 months, everyone he encountered had wanted something from him. Information, money, his death. This woman who owed him nothing simply nodded and let him keep his ghosts. "The wolves will bring their pack back," Kaya said, standing. She moved stiffly but with determination. "There is a cave 1/2 a mile north. We should move before they come." Jake got to his feet. "Lead the way. You know this land better than I do." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, that he acknowledged her expertise, that he did not try to take charge or tell her what to do. "Follow close," she said. "The path is not easy." She was not lying. Kaya led him through a maze of rock that Jake would have sworn was impassable. She moved like water, finding gaps and spaces where none seemed to exist, reading the land the way other people read books. Twice she stopped to check their back trail, making sure they were not followed. Once she paused to gather strange leaves from a plant Jake did not recognize. "For the wound," she explained without looking back. "Stops infection better than your whiskey." Jake watched as she crushed the leaves between her palms, then calmly smeared the green paste over her own injury without so much as a wince. She did not ask for help, did not need it. The demonstration of pure competence, of self-sufficiency, impressed him more than he wanted to admit. "You know medicine? My grandmother taught me everything about survival in this land." She wiped her hands on her buckskin dress. "Wisdom passed down through generations, knowledge your people have forgotten or never learned." The past tense in her voice held weight, held loss. Jake heard it clearly but did not push. Kaya started walking again, and he followed. The cave appeared like a mirage, a dark opening in the red rock that seemed to materialize only when they were steps away. Inside, the air was 10 degrees cooler, the light soft and dim, deep enough to hide in, shallow enough to have a back exit if needed. Strategic, safe. Kaya settled against one wall while Jake checked the entrance. When he turned back, he saw her eyes fixed on something that had fallen from his saddlebag during the scramble inside. The wanted poster lay on the cave floor. His own face stared up from the crude drawing. Jacob Brennan. Murder of Sheriff Thomas Wade. $3,000. Dead or alive. Jake's hand drifted toward his gun. Old reflexes, old fears. But Kaya just looked at the poster, then at him. Her face unreadable. "Did you do it?" she asked. The question was simple, direct, no judgment in her voice. Just a need to know the truth. "He drew first." Jake's voice came out quiet, tired. "But his boss owns the judge. I could not get a fair trial." Kaya nodded slowly. as if this confirmed something she already suspected. "I understand running from false justice. My people do it every day." The simple acceptance in her words cracked something in Jake's chest. For 6 months he had carried the weight of that shooting alone, never knowing if he had made the right choice, never sure if he was truly innocent or just telling himself comfortable lies. This woman he had known for an hour did not question, did not doubt. She understood. "The man who owns that judge," Kaya continued. Her voice dropped to something cold, dangerous. "Luther Blackwood." Jake's head snapped up. "You know him?" "He killed my family 3 years ago." Each word was carved from ice. "Burned our camp to steal the land. Murdered my parents, my brother, everyone." The air in the cave seemed to solidify. Jake saw it now, the old pain beneath her strength, the scar tissue that had formed around a wound that would never fully heal. He knew that look. He wore it himself. "I am sorry," he said, meaning it. "That kind of evil needs to be stopped." Kaya leaned forward. Her eyes were no longer just fierce. They were calculating, planning. "But I cannot do it alone. I have tried. He has too many men, too much power. Every time I get close, he slips away." Jake understood what she was asking without her having to say it. An alliance, a partnership, 2 people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid. It was exactly the kind of thing that would get him killed. But looking at Kaya, seeing the determination in her face, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength in her bearing, Jake realized he had already made his decision. He made it the moment he heard her scream and chose to ride toward danger instead of away from it. "What did you have in mind?" he asked. Kaya's smile was sharp as a knife. "I know where Blackwood's men patrol. I know the land. I can track and hunt and survive anywhere in this territory." She paused. "But I am one woman with a bow. You are a ranger with a gun and knowledge of how white men think, how they fight." "Former ranger," Jake corrected. "The skills do not disappear just because the badge does." She held out her hand. There was nothing uncertain in the gesture. This was a warrior offering an alliance between equals. "Help me stop Blackwood. In return, I will help you survive long enough to clear your name." Jake looked at her hand, then at her face, thought about the 6 months of running, of hiding, of slowly losing himself in the desert. Thought about the alternative she was offering. Dangerous, yes. Possibly fatal, absolutely. But it was movement. It was purpose. It was something other than waiting to be caught or killed. He reached out and gripped her hand. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. "Partners." "Partners," Kaya agreed. Outside the cave, the sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. Inside, 2 people who had been running in different directions found each other and chose to run together instead. Neither knew if they would survive the choice. But for the first time in a long time, both of them felt something other than despair. Night fell over the desert like a held breath. Stars emerged one by one, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands, until the sky blazed with cold fire. In the cave, Jake settled against the wall with his rifle across his lap. Kaya sat opposite him, already checking her weapons, planning their next move. The partnership was only minutes old, but it felt right, felt solid. "We will need supplies," Kaya said, "and we need to stay ahead of whoever is hunting you." "About that," Jake's voice went flat. "There is a bounty hunter named Virgil Cade, best tracker in the territory. If Blackwood wants me dead bad enough to spend money, Cade is probably already on my trail. Then we move at first light, head north toward the mountains where tracking is harder." Jake nodded. It was a good plan. Simple. Smart. The kind of plan that might actually work if they were lucky and careful. But luck, Jake had learned, was a fickle friend in Arizona territory. He did not tell Kaya the rest. Did not mention that somewhere out there a man with cold eyes and fast hands was looking at a photograph. Did not explain that the photograph showed a younger version of himself. Did not reveal that Virgil Cade was not just any bounty hunter. That particular complication could wait. "You should sleep," Jake said. I will take first watch. Kaya shook her head. I do not sleep much, not anymore. Bad dreams. Worse than being awake. She pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small. For the first time since he met her, she looked her age, young, vulnerable, haunted by things no person should have to carry. When I close my eyes, I hear them, my mother screaming, my brother crying, the gunshots. Jake was quiet for a long moment. I understand, he finally said. I hear Sheriff Wade sometimes, that moment before I pulled the trigger. He had this look in his eyes, like he knew he was going to lose but had to try anyway. Do you regret it? Killing him? Jake considered the question honestly. No, he would have killed me, and he was guilty of worse things than I knew at the time, but I regret what came after. The running, the hiding, losing everything I spent my whole life building. Kaya studied him in the dim light filtering through the cave entrance. You are an honest man, Jake Brennan. That is rare, especially for your kind. My kind. Lawmen. They usually believe their badge makes them righteous, even when they are wrong. I stopped believing that a long time ago. Jake shifted against the rock, trying to find a comfortable position that did not exist. The badge is just metal. The law is just words on paper. What matters is what a man does when nobody is watching, how he treats people who cannot fight back. And that is why you stopped when you heard me scream. I stopped because it was the right thing to do, because I could help, because walking away would have made me someone I do not want to be. Kaya was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. My father said something similar once. Before the soldiers came, before Blackwood. He said the measure of a man is not in his victories but in his choices, especially the hard ones. He sounds like a wise man. He was. Whitehawk, that was his name. Pride and pain mingled in her voice. He led our band for 15 years, kept us alive through wars and treaties and broken promises. He believed in peace, in finding a way to live alongside your people without losing who we were. What happened? The question hung in the air. Jake almost took it back, sensing he was pushing into territory she might not be ready to share. But Kaya had already decided to trust him with part of her story. Maybe she needed to tell the rest. Blackwood wanted our land. There was copper beneath it, maybe silver too. He came with papers, legal documents that said the territory belonged to him. Her voice turned bitter. As if papers could own the earth our ancestors walked for 1,000 years. Your father tried to negotiate. He tried everything. Talked to the army. Talked to the territorial government. Wrote letters to Washington. Everyone said the same thing. The papers were legal. We had to leave. But you did not. We had nowhere else to go. Kaya's hands clenched into fists. Every piece of land we were promised, every reservation we were sent to, someone always wanted it for something else. Gold, silver, copper, cattle. There was always a reason to push us further, to take more. Jake said nothing. There was nothing to say. The history she described was not distant for him. He had seen it with his own eyes during his years as a ranger, seen treaties torn up and rewritten, seen promises made and broken, seen entire peoples displaced because someone found something valuable beneath their feet. Blackwood gave us 3 days, Kaya continued. 3 days to leave everything we had ever known. My father asked for more time, asked for help relocating, asked for basic human decency. And Blackwood said no. Blackwood sent his men on the second night. Her voice went flat, empty, the way people sound when they are describing something too painful to feel anymore. They came after dark, torches and guns. They set fire to the wickiups first. Then they shot anyone who tried to run. How did you survive? I hid in a dry creek bed, covered myself with mud and stones. She closed her eyes, and Jake could see her reliving it. The flames, the screams, the gunshots. I heard my mother calling my name, heard my brother crying for help, but I could not move. I was frozen, like a rabbit hiding from a hawk. You were scared. That is normal. I was a coward. The word came out like a whip crack. I lay in that creek bed and listened to my family die. And I did nothing. Jake leaned forward. His voice was gentle but firm. You were a young woman facing armed men with torches and rifles. What were you supposed to do? Run out and die with them? Maybe. Yes. At least then I would not have to live with this. No, Jake shook his head. Surviving is not cowardice. Surviving is how you fight back. Every day you wake up, every day you keep going, every day you work toward justice for your family. That is how you honor them, not by dying, by living. Kaya opened her eyes. Tears glistened on her cheeks, but her voice was steady. You really believe that? I have to. It is the only thing that keeps me putting one foot in front of the other. They sat in silence as the stars wheeled overhead. Two people bound by loss and circumstance. Two survivors learning that sometimes the only way forward is together. There is something else, Kaya said finally. Something I heard that night while I was hiding. What? The men talked while they worked, laughing, joking, like burning families alive was just another job. Her voice hardened. One of them mentioned another raid, same night, same orders from Blackwood. Jake felt ice form in his gut. Another raid. A settler family, the Thompsons. They had a homestead near Fort Bowie. Blackwood wanted their land too. The Thompson massacre. Jake's mind raced. He remembered reading about it in the newspapers. 4 people dead, officially blamed on Apache raiders. They said your people did it. Of course they did. Blame the savages. Who would question it? Kaya's laugh held no humor. But I know the truth. I heard them say they finished the job on the whites, and now it was time for the Apache. Same night, same men, same orders. Jake sat back processing this information. If what Kaya said was true, and he had no reason to doubt her, then Blackwood was not just corrupt. He was a mass murderer who used racial tensions to cover his crimes. Kill settlers, blame Indians, kill Indians, blame settlers. Everyone too busy hating each other to notice the real enemy in their midst. This changes things, Jake said slowly. How? If we can prove the connection. If we can show that the same men attacked both groups on the same night, then we have evidence that could hang Blackwood, evidence that could clear my name and avenge your family and bring justice to every person that monster has killed. Kaya's eyes narrowed. You think we can find such proof? I think we have to try. Jake stood suddenly energized by possibility. You said you know a man named Sam Porter. Yes, a retired ranger. He helped my father once years ago, warned him about army movements during the Apache Wars. He lives on a ranch south of Socorro. Sam Porter. Jake almost laughed. I served under him. 15 years ago when I was just a kid with a badge and more courage than sense. He is one of the most honest men I have ever known. Then the spirits did bring you to that canyon for a reason. Maybe they did. Jake offered his hand to help her up. We should rest while we can. Tomorrow we ride for Sam's ranch. If anyone can help us build a case against Blackwood, it is him. Kaya took his hand and rose to her feet. She stood close to him in the darkness, close enough that he could see starlight reflected in her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For listening, for believing me, for not treating me like a child or a victim or something to be protected. You saved my life back there, Jake reminded her. That rock you threw, another second, and that wolf would have had my throat. So, we are even. We are partners. There is no keeping score. Kaya nodded slowly. Something in her expression shifted. The wary distance she had maintained since they met softened slightly. Partners, she repeated. I have never had a partner before. Neither have I. Not really. Jake moved back to his spot against the wall. But I figure we will learn as we go. That is how most important things are learned. They settled into their positions. Jake against one wall, Kaya against the other. The fire of the stars overhead, the silence of the desert all around. Neither slept much that night, But for the first time in longer than either could remember, they were not alone in their nightmares. Miles away, in a saloon that smelled of whiskey and desperation, a man with cold eyes studied a photograph. The image was old and creased from years of handling. It showed two boys standing side by side in front of a Texas farmhouse. The taller one, maybe 12, had dark hair and a suspicious scowl. The shorter one, maybe 9, smiled at the camera with innocent confidence. On the back, written in faded ink, Jake and Virgil, 1845. Pa's boys. Virgil Cade traced the younger boy's face with one calloused finger. Then he folded the photograph carefully and slipped it into his vest pocket, right next to his heart, right where family belonged. Virgil Cade. He looked up. A man in expensive clothes had entered the saloon. Silver hair, silk vest, the soft hands of someone who paid others to do his dirty work. Luther Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood. Virgil did not stand, did not offer his hand. The rules of polite society had never applied to him. Heard you were looking for skilled help. Blackwood slid into the seat across from him, wrinkling his nose at the smell. Men like him did not belong in places like this. But men like him needed men like Virgil, and sometimes that meant slumming. Jake Brennan, $3,000. Dead or alive? Blackwood placed a wanted poster on the table. I assume you have seen this. I have. Word is you are the best tracker in the territory. Some say you could follow a ghost through a sandstorm. People say a lot of things. Virgil sipped his whiskey. Let the silence stretch. Men like Blackwood were not used to being made to wait. It was good for them. Can you find him? Probably. Then you are hired. Standard terms. Half now, half on delivery. Alive is preferable, but dead is acceptable. Virgil smiled. The expression held no warmth, no humor, just the baring of teeth that predators use to signal dominance. I do not want your money. Blackwood blinked. I beg your pardon. I said I do not want your money. Virgil drained his whiskey and set the glass down with deliberate care. I will find Jake Brennan for you. I will bring him in dead or alive, whatever works out easier, but I am not doing it for $3,000. Then what do you want? Virgil pulled the photograph from his pocket, unfolded it, laid it on the table between them. Blackwood studied the image. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Brothers, half-brothers, same father, different mothers. Virgil's voice was flat, emotionless, but something dark moved beneath the surface. My mother died giving birth to me. Pa married his mother a year later, raised us together, tried to love us the same. But he did not. Oh, he tried. I will give the old man that. He tried his best to be fair. Virgil picked up the photograph again, stared at the smiling boy with something that might have been hatred or might have been envy. But Jake was always special. Jake was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who became a Texas Ranger, the one Pa bragged about to everyone who would listen. And you? I became this. Virgil gestured at himself. The worn clothes, the scarred hands, the eyes that had watched men die and felt nothing. A bounty hunter, a killer for hire, everything Pa was ashamed of. Yet you do not want money to catch your brother. I want something money cannot buy. Virgil leaned forward. I want to prove once and for all who is the better man, who deserved Pa's love, who deserved to carry the Brennan name. Blackwood studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, the expression of a man who had just found the perfect tool for a dirty job. Then we have a deal, Mr. Cade. Find your brother, bring him to justice, and prove whatever you need to prove. Virgil stood, dropped coins on the bar, walked toward the door. Mr. Cade, Blackwood called after him. One more thing. Virgil paused, but did not turn. There is an Apache woman traveling with him, Kaya Redfeather. She has been a thorn in my side for 3 years. If she happens to die during your hunt, there would be a bonus. How much? Another 1,000. Virgil considered this. Then he nodded once and walked out into the fading light. Behind him, the saloon doors swung slowly closed. Ahead, the desert waited, indifferent to the drama of men, caring only that the strong survived and the weak became dust. The hunt had begun. Back in the cave, Jake felt a sudden chill despite the warm air. He looked at Kaya and found her watching him. Her expression was thoughtful, alert. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she said, but her hand moved to the knife at her belt. Her eyes scanned the canyon entrance as if expecting company. "Just a feeling, like something is coming." Jake trusted feelings. Feelings had kept him alive when logic said he should be dead. "We will be ready," he said. "Yes." Kaya nodded slowly. "We will." They sat in silence as the night deepened. Outside, the desert held its secrets. The stars turned their ancient patterns, and somewhere in the darkness, riders were already moving, searching, hunting. Jake did not know that one of those hunters shared his blood, did not know that the man tracking him carried 30 years of jealousy and resentment like a loaded gun, did not know that before this was over he would face a choice between justice and family. Some revelations had to wait, but not for long. "There is something I should tell you," Jake said suddenly. Kaya looked at him, waiting. "The bounty hunter I mentioned, Virgil Cade." Jake paused, searching for words that did not want to come. "He is not just the best tracker in Arizona, he is—" The words caught in his throat. "He is family." "Family. My half-brother. Same father, different mother. We grew up together, hated each other most of that time." Jake shook his head. "I have not seen him in 20 years. Not since I joined the Rangers and he went the other direction. And now he hunts you." "If Blackwood is paying, yes. Virgil would track his own mother for the right price." Jake's laugh was bitter. "Actually, that is not fair. He would track her for free just to prove he could." Kaya absorbed this information. Her expression did not change, but Jake could see her mind working, reassessing, adjusting her understanding of the danger they faced. "Does he know you, your habits, your patterns?" "He knows the man I was 20 years ago. A lot has changed since then. But some things do not change. The way a man thinks, the way he moves, the instincts he learned as a child." Jake nodded reluctantly. She was right. Virgil might not know the specifics of Jake's life since they parted ways, but he knew the foundation, the core, the brother he had grown up fighting and competing with. "We will need to be unpredictable," Jake said. "Do things I would not normally do. Go places I would not normally go." "Then we start now." Kaya rose to her feet, suddenly energized. "There is another way to Sam Porter's ranch. Harder, longer, through territory most white men cannot navigate. Apache trails. Older than that. Paths my grandmother showed me. Paths that have been used for generations but never mapped, never recorded. Invisible to anyone who does not know what to look for." Jake stood as well. "Lead the way." "Now it is the middle of the night. Best time to move if we are being hunted. And if your feeling is right, if something is coming, I would rather be moving than sitting here waiting for it." Kaya considered this. Then she nodded. "Gather your things. We leave in 5 minutes." They moved through the cave quickly, efficiently, partners already falling into rhythm with each other. Jake checked his rifle, his pistol, his ammunition. Kaya gathered her bow, her remaining arrows, the medicine plants she had collected. At the cave entrance they paused. The night stretched before them, vast and dark and full of danger. Somewhere out there Blackwood's men were searching. Somewhere out there Virgil Cade was tracking. Somewhere out there the forces of corruption and greed were mobilizing against them. But they were not helpless. Not alone. Not anymore. "Ready?" Jake asked. Kaya looked at him. In the starlight her eyes held determination, purpose, the fire of someone who had lost everything and decided to fight anyway. "I have been ready for 3 years," she said. "I was just waiting for the right ally." They stepped out of the cave and into the darkness. Behind them, the shelter they had shared became just another shadow in the canyon. Ahead, the path wound into uncertainty, into danger, into the possibility of justice or death. But they moved forward anyway, because that was what survivors did. That was what partners did. And somewhere in the desert night, watching through a spyglass from a distant ridge, a lone rider marked their departure. He did not follow. Not yet. He simply noted the direction they traveled, the pace they set, the way they moved together like two people learning to trust each other. Then he turned his horse and disappeared into the darkness. By morning he would be miles away, carrying news to men who would pay well for information. The war was coming. All the pieces were moving into position. And soon, very soon, blood would paint the desert red. Dawn came to the desert like a benediction, soft light washing the red rocks gold. Mist clung to the canyon floor like ghostly fingers reaching for something they could never hold. Jake woke to find Kaya already standing at the cave entrance where they had stopped to rest, her silhouette sharp against the brightening sky. She had not made a sound when she moved, but somehow he had felt the shift in the air. Old instincts, ranger instincts, the kind that kept a man breathing in dangerous country. "Sleep well?" he asked, his voice rough from the dry air. "Long enough." She did not turn. Her eyes were scanning the terrain below with the focused intensity of a hawk searching for prey. "We should move soon. The path I mentioned becomes harder to find once the sun is fully up." Jake rose and stretched muscles that protested after a night on hard stone. His wound from weeks of running had finally started to heal, but new aches had taken their place. 49 years of hard living were catching up to him. He joined Kaya at the entrance and followed her gaze across the landscape. The desert stretched before them in waves of ochre and shadow, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Somewhere out there men were hunting them. Somewhere out there justice waited to be claimed or denied. "How far to Sam's ranch?" he asked. 2 days if we take the main trails, 3 if we use the old paths." Kaya finally turned to look at him. In the morning light he could see how young she really was. Young, but with eyes that had seen too much. "The old paths are safer but harder. Your choice. Your paths. Your expertise." Jake moved to gather his gear. "I trust your judgment." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, that he deferred to her so easily, that he did not assert his authority simply because he was older or male or had once worn a badge. Most men would not say that. Most men are fools. Jake slung his saddlebag over his shoulder. "I have stayed alive this long by knowing when to lead and when to follow. Right now you know this land better than I ever will. Following you is not weakness. It is wisdom." Kaya studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "You continue to surprise me, Jake Brennan." "Good. Predictable men are dead men." They rode out as the sun cleared the eastern peaks. 2 figures on horseback moving through a landscape that seemed painted in shades of fire and earth. Kaya led, choosing paths that looked impossible until you were on them. Jake followed close behind, trusting her judgment, learning her rhythms. The terrain changed as they traveled. Red rock gave way to scrub grass, then to rolling hills dotted with pinon and juniper. The air grew slightly cooler, cleaner, tasting of sage and pine instead of dust and desperation. Twice Kaya stopped to check their back trail. Each time she studied the horizon with narrowed eyes, reading signs that Jake could not see. Each time she seemed satisfied that they were not being followed. "You move like a ghost," Jake said during their second stop. "I have tracked Apache before, never could catch them." "That is because you were looking for what you expected to see." Kaya handed him her canteen. "We do not move like white men. We move like the land itself, part of it, not separate from it. Can you teach me?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "Teach you to move like Apache. Teach me to survive like you do, to read the land, to see what I have been missing." Kaya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "My grandmother used to say that learning begins with humility, the willingness to admit you do not know everything." She looked at him with new assessment. "Most white men cannot do that. Their pride will not allow it. My pride nearly got me killed in Tombstone, nearly got me hanged." Jake shook his head. "I have learned the hard way that pride is a luxury I cannot afford." Then yes. Kaya took back her canteen and stored it. I will teach you what I can, starting now. She began pointing out things he had never noticed, the way certain plants only grew where water was near, the patterns in rock formations that indicated safe passage, the subtle signs of animal movement that could warn of danger or lead to food, the language of the land itself written in stone and sand and growing things. Jake listened, absorbed, learned, and as the miles passed beneath their horses' hooves, something shifted between them. The wary alliance of survivors became something closer to partnership. The partnership began to feel like friendship. They crossed the Gila River at a shallow ford in late afternoon. The horses drank deep while Jake and Kaya refilled their canteens. The water was cold and sweet, tasting of snowmelt from mountains still far away. We should reach Sam's ranch by tomorrow evening, Kaya said, studying the sky. If the weather holds. And if it does not, then we find shelter and wait. The desert does not care about our plans. Fighting it only makes things worse. Jake nodded. Another lesson learned. On the far bank, Kaya paused to gather plants. Her hands moved quickly and surely, selecting specific leaves and roots with the confidence of long practice. Medicine for wounds, food for lean times, tools for survival. Your grandmother taught you all this, Jake asked, watching her work. She taught me to see the world as the Apache see it, not as something to conquer or own, but as something to understand and live with. Kaya tucked the plants into her saddlebag. The land provides if you know how to ask. It kills if you demand. Sounds like wisdom. Sounds like common sense. A hint of bitterness crept into her voice. But your people do not seem to have much of that when it comes to the desert. There was no accusation in her words, just statement of fact. Jake could not argue. He had seen too many settlers try to force the land to be something it was not. Digging where they should not dig. Building where they should not build. Most of them died or gave up within a year. The survivors were the ones who learned to adapt, to listen, to respect. Tell me about Blackwood, Jake said as they rode on. How did it start? Kaya was quiet for so long he thought she would not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, seeing the past instead of the trail ahead. We had a camp, small, maybe 30 people. We had moved there after the cavalry forced us off our traditional lands further south. She paused to navigate a tricky section of trail. Blackwood wanted the territory for copper mining. The geologists had found rich deposits beneath our camp. He came with papers, legal documents, signed by judges, stamped with official seals. Her hands tightened on the reins, as if papers could own the earth, as if signatures could erase 1,000 years of our people living on that land. Your father tried to negotiate. He tried everything. My father was a patient man, a wise man. He believed that with enough talking, enough understanding, we could find a way to coexist. Kaya's voice hardened. He was wrong. Blackwood gave you 3 days. 3 days to abandon everything. Our homes, our sacred places, the graves of our ancestors. She shook her head. We had nowhere else to go. Every piece of land we were promised, every reservation we were sent to, someone always wanted it for something else. Gold, silver, copper, cattle. There was always a reason to push us further. So you refused to leave. We asked for more time, for help relocating, for basic human decency. Kaya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Blackwood's response was fire and bullets. They rode in silence after that. What could you say to someone who had lost everything? What words could possibly touch that kind of pain? Jake knew from experience that the answer was none. Silence was better. Silence was at least honest. The sun was painting the western sky in shades of blood and gold when Sam Porter's ranch finally came into view. It sat in a small valley protected by low hills on 3 sides. Strategic positioning. Defensible. The kind of place a man with enemies would choose. A modest house of adobe and timber. A barn. A corral with a few horses. Smoke rising from the chimney. Sam was alive then. Still here. Still fighting whatever fights an old ranger fought these days. Jake felt relief wash through him, and something else, something that felt almost like hope. "He is a good man," Kaya said quietly. "One of the few I have met among your people. Sam judges men by their actions, not their skin. It is why he was a good ranger." Jake urged his horse forward. "It is why he is a good man." They were still a quarter-mile out when a figure appeared on the porch. Even at this distance, Jake recognized the stance. The way Sam held his rifle like it was part of his arm, the patient alertness of a predator waiting to see if the approaching animals were prey or threat. Jake raised his hand palm out, the old signal that meant friend not foe. Sam's rifle dipped slightly, then rose again. Trust but verify. That was Sam's way. That was the ranger way. They rode closer, close enough for faces to become clear in the fading light. "Well, I will be damned." Sam's voice carried across the yard rough as gravel and twice as hard. "Jake Brennan, thought you were dead, or worse." "Sam," Jake pulled up his horse, keeping his hands visible. "I need help." The old man's eyes shifted to Kaya, taking in her Apache clothing, the bow across her back, the proud way she sat her horse. "And you brought company, Apache by the look of her." "Chiricahua," Kaya said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Kaya Red Feather." Sam studied her for a long moment. His weathered face was unreadable. Then something softened in his expression. "Red Feather. I knew your father. White Hawk. Good man. Honest man." He lowered his rifle fully. "I was sorry to hear about what happened to your camp." "You knew?" Kaya's voice was sharp. "I know a lot of things that I cannot prove and cannot stop." Sam stepped down from the porch. "Come inside, both of you. Looks like you have got stories to tell, and I have got coffee strong enough to strip paint." The ranch house was small but solid, built from adobe and timber that had weathered decades of desert sun and winter cold. Inside it smelled of wood smoke and coffee, leather and gun oil. The walls were bare except for a few photographs and an old cavalry saber crossed with a ranger badge. Sam's history written in objects instead of words. The old ranger poured them coffee black enough to see your reflection in and waited while they drank. Only when both cups were half empty did he speak. "Jake, that warrant is still hot. Every lawman and bounty hunter from here to Texas is looking for you." Sam settled into a chair across from them. "What happened in Tombstone?" Jake set his cup down. The ceramic clicked against the wooden table. Sheriff Wade was dirty, working for Blackwood. He met Sam's eyes. "I found evidence. Wade helped murder a homesteader family for their land deed, the Thompson family out near Fort Bowie." "The Thompsons," Sam nodded slowly. "4 dead. Official report said Apache raiders." "That is what Blackwood wanted everyone to think." Jake leaned forward. "I confronted Wade, tried to bring him in proper the way you taught me. He drew on me. I was faster." "But Blackwood owns Judge Morrison." "Exactly. Rigged trial. Guilty verdict before I even testified. My own statement was not allowed as evidence." The bitterness in Jake's voice surprised him. He thought he had buried that anger months ago. "They were going to hang me at dawn. I broke out the night before." Sam was quiet for a moment, processing. His eyes moved to Kaya. "And you are mixed up in this how?" Kaya's voice was steady. "That homesteader family, the Thompsons, 4 dead. The same night they died, the same men came to my camp." "The same night?" Sam sat up straighter. "I heard them talking while they burned us out. Heard them say they had finished the job on the whites. Now it was time for the Apache." Kaya's hands clenched into fists. "It was all one operation, all one plan. Blackwood wanted the Thompson land and our camp. Both sat on the same copper vein. He killed both groups in one sweep." Sam swore, long and creative, words Jake had not heard since his ranger days. "How many families has that bastard murdered?" "At least a dozen." Sam stood and began to pace. "Maybe more. I have been documenting it, sending reports to Santa Fe, but nothing happens. He owns too many people. Judges, sheriffs, territorial officials. The man has built himself an empire on blood and corruption. Then we make something happen." Jake's voice was hard, determined. We find proof, real proof, the kind that even bought judges cannot ignore. Kaya leaned forward. Do you have evidence? Papers, witnesses? Sam moved to a cabinet and pulled out a folder thick with documents. He spread them across the table. I have got deeds, letters, testimony from survivors, but it is not enough to hang him. He tapped the papers with one gnarled finger. What we need is Blackwood's own records. What records? He keeps a ledger. They say he writes down everything, every deal, every payoff, every murder, all documented because the man is arrogant enough to think he is untouchable. Jake studied the papers, names and dates, amounts paid, families destroyed, a catalog of evil written in black ink and fading pencil. Where is this ledger? His office in Tucson, locked safe, guarded day and night. Sam's voice was grim. I have tried to get to it. So have others. 2 men died trying. It is a fortress. Kaya had been studying the documents, her finger tracing names and dates. These families. I recognize some of these names. Apache, Mexican, white settlers. He does not care who he kills as long as they are in his way. That is Blackwood. Sam nodded. Equal opportunity murderer. The room fell silent as the weight of what they faced settled over them. One man against an empire of corruption. Actually, Jake corrected himself, looking at Kaya and Sam. 3 people against an empire. Better odds than he had faced alone. What if we do not go to the ledger? Kaya said suddenly. Both men looked at her. What if we make Blackwood bring it to us? How? Jake asked. He wants us dead. He is sending men. Kaya's eyes were calculating, planning. What if we make him so angry, so desperate that he comes himself, brings his records to show his investors why he needs more money to deal with us? Make it public. Make it loud. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of bold thinking that might actually work. Sam was grinning. Girl, you think like a warrior and plan like a general. I like it. It will take time to set up, Jake said. His mind was already working through logistics. And we will need help, more than just the 3 of us. I know people. Sam moved to a drawer and pulled out a list of names. Good people. People who have lost family to Blackwood. Settlers who watched their neighbors burned out. Ranchers who refused to sell and barely survived the consequences. They will fight if they think there is a real chance. Kaya stood moving to the window. Outside the stars were coming out, bright and cold in the desert sky. My people will fight too. Takakota the elder, who leads what is left of our band. He will listen if I ask. Then we have the start of an army. Jake picked up his coffee cup. Small but motivated. Sam raised his own cup. To small armies and big ambitions. They drank to that. 3 people bound by loss and hope, planning a war against a man who had taken everything from them. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere out there, Luther Blackwood slept in his mansion, secure in his power, confident in his invincibility. He had no idea what was coming, no idea that 3 people in a small ranch house were weaving the rope that would hang him. But he would learn. Soon enough, he would learn. Morning came with the smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee. Sam was already up and moving despite the gray light that said dawn was still minutes away. Old habits. Ranger habits. Jake found Kaya outside when he emerged from the spare room where he had slept better than he had in months. She was moving through a series of stretches and exercises that looked like a dance, but were clearly combat training. Each movement flowed into the next with the grace that came from years of practice. She had been up even earlier than Sam. She does not sleep much, does she? Sam said, appearing beside Jake with 2 cups of coffee. Can you blame her, after what she has been through? No. Sam handed him one of the cups. But lack of sleep makes mistakes. Mistakes get people killed. You watch her, make sure she rests when she can. She is not a child, Sam. She is a warrior. Warriors die too. The old man's voice was quiet, serious. Usually because they forget they are human. They ate breakfast together, the 3 of them, as the sun finally cleared the eastern peaks. The food was simple, but good. For a few minutes they let themselves pretend this was normal. Just 3 people sharing a meal. But the illusion could not last. Sam pushed his plate away and pulled out a map, spreading it across the table. If we are doing this, we need to be smart. He looked at Kaya. You said your elder Takakota might help. How far to your camp? 2 days' ride northeast, into the Pinaleno Mountains. Kaya traced the route with her finger. The path is difficult. Most white men cannot find it. But you can guide us. I can guide Jake. She looked at Sam. You should stay here. Someone needs to gather the others you mentioned. Settlers who lost family. Anyone willing to fight. Sam started to protest, but Jake cut him off. She is right. You know these people. You can convince them. Kaya and I are not exactly trusted figures right now. Wanted criminal and Apache woman. Jake shook his head. We would scare them off before we could explain. The old ranger scowled, but he nodded. Fine, but you take supplies, food, ammunition, medicine, and you watch each other's backs. Blackwood's men are still out there, and they will be looking for revenge. We will be careful, Jake promised. Careful is good. Sam's eyes were hard. Lucky is better. Try to be both. They spent the rest of the morning planning, identifying potential allies, mapping routes, discussing contingencies. By midday, they had the skeleton of a strategy. Jake would go with Kaya to the Apache camp, convince Takakota to join their cause. Meanwhile, Sam would ride to the scattered homesteads and ranches, gathering anyone willing to stand against Blackwood. They would meet back at the ranch in 6 days. 6 days to build an army. 6 days to plan a war. It was not enough time, but it was all they had. That night, Jake found Kaya sitting on the porch staring at the stars. You should rest, he said, settling into the chair beside her. I told you, sleep brings dreams I do not want. She did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on some distant point in the darkness. When I close my eyes, I am back in that creek bed, listening to my family die. I know something about nightmares. Your sheriff. And other things. 20 years of rangering leaves marks that do not show on the skin. Jake was quiet for a moment. But the dreams are not the worst part. The worst part is waking up and remembering that it was not a dream. That it really happened. That you cannot go back and change it. Kaya finally looked at him. In the starlight, her face was soft, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. You understand. I understand that carrying pain alone makes it heavier, and I understand that finding someone who shares that burden even a little makes it easier to bear. Is that why you stayed after the wolves? After you learned who I was and what I wanted? Jake considered the question honestly. I stayed because helping you felt like the first right thing I had done in 6 months. Because your cause is just, and your enemy is my enemy. He paused. And because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for, worth fighting beside. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just full of things that did not need to be said out loud. Kaya reached out and touched his hand, just for a moment, just long enough for the warmth of her skin to register before she pulled back. You are a good man, Jake Brennan. Do not let this world kill that. I am trying. Try harder. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. I need you alive if we are going to bring down Blackwood. Just for Blackwood. The question hung in the air, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. For now, Kaya said softly, ask me again when this is over. She stood and walked inside, leaving Jake alone with the stars and his thoughts. He sat there for a long time, thinking about the woman who had entered his life like a wildfire and burned away the numbness he had been carrying for months, thinking about the fight ahead, thinking about what it might mean to have something to live for again. When he finally went inside, he slept without nightmares for the first time in longer than he could remember. Miles away on a ridge overlooking Sam Porter's ranch, Virgil Cade lowered his spyglass. He had been watching for hours, studying the patterns, learning the rhythms, the old ranger who moved with the stiffness of age but the alertness of experience, the Apache woman who never seemed to rest, and Jake, his little brother. Virgil had not seen him in 20 years, not since the day Jake rode off to join the Rangers and Virgil stayed behind to bury their differences along with their father's expectations. Jake had become a lawman, the pride of the family, everything their father had hoped for. Virgil had become something else entirely. He pulled out the old photograph, studied the two boys frozen in time, so young, so innocent, before life had taught them that the world was cruel and family was just another word for disappointment. "You always were the golden child," Virgil murmured to the image, Pa's favorite, the one who could do no wrong. He remembered the day Jake got his ranger badge, the way their father's eyes had lit up with pride, the way he had clapped Jake on the shoulder and called him son in a voice that said this was the moment he had been waiting for all along. Virgil had been standing right there, watching, invisible. He had killed his first man that same year, a bank robber in El Paso, clean shot right between the eyes. He had thought maybe his father would be proud of that too, would see that Virgil had skills worth respecting. Instead, his father had looked at him with something that might have been disgust, or fear, or both. "That is not the same thing," the old man had said. "Jake enforces the law. You just kill for money." The words had burned, still burned 20 years later. Virgil folded the photograph and tucked it back into his vest pocket, right next to his heart, right where the pain lived. "Well, Pa," he said to the empty darkness, "let us see which of your sons is really the better man, the lawman who became a fugitive, or the killer who always knew what he was." He mounted his horse and rode toward Socorro. He knew where they were going next. The Apache woman had mentioned someone named Rosa Martinez, a widow in town who had been collecting evidence against Blackwood. Virgil would be waiting, and this time there would be a reckoning. They left Sam's ranch before dawn, riding into a morning that smelled of sage and possibility. Jake felt different, lighter somehow. The weight he had been carrying for 6 months was still there, but it no longer crushed him. He had allies now, purpose, a plan that might actually work. And Kaya. He watched her ride ahead of him, straight-backed and alert, reading the land with eyes that missed nothing. She had changed, too, he realized. The wary distance she had maintained when they first met had softened. She smiled more easily now, spoke more openly, let him see glimpses of the woman beneath the warrior. "You are staring," she said without turning around. "Just admiring the view." "The desert or me?" "Both." She glanced back at him, and he caught the hint of a smile before she faced forward again. "Flattery will not make me ride slower. I would never suggest such a thing." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. The terrain grew more civilized as they approached Socorro. Fewer wild spaces, more signs of human habitation, fences marking property lines, trails worn smooth by regular traffic. "There is something I need to tell you," Jake said as they stopped to water the horses at a small creek. "About Virgil Cade." Kaya's expression sharpened. "The bounty hunter. He is not just a bounty hunter, he is—" Jake struggled with the words. "He is my half-brother." The silence that followed was heavy. "Your brother hunts you for money. For money. For pride. For 20 years of resentment that I did not even know existed until now." Jake shook his head. "We grew up together. Same father, different mothers. Pa tried to treat us equal, but Virgil never saw it that way. He always felt like second choice, second best. And now he wants to prove himself by bringing you in, or killing me. At this point, I am not sure which he would prefer." Kaya absorbed this information. Her face was thoughtful rather than alarmed. "Does he know you? Your habits? The way you think? He knows the boy I was, the young ranger full of ideals and certainty." Jake's laugh was bitter. "That man died in Tombstone. I am not sure what replaced him. Someone stronger, someone who has learned that the world is not black and white." Kaya moved closer to him. "Your brother hunts a ghost. The man standing before me is real." Jake met her eyes. saw something there that made his chest tighten. Thank you for that. Thank me when we survive this. They mounted up and continued toward Socorro. The town appeared in late afternoon, a small collection of buildings clinging to the edge of the Rio Grande like a child clutching its mother's skirt. Mining town originally, now a waypoint for ranchers and drifters, the kind of place where asking too many questions could get you killed. We cannot ride in together, Kaya said as they studied the town from a rise. 4 of us, including Apache in traditional clothing, would draw too much attention. I should go alone, find Rosa, make contact. No, Kaya's voice was firm. It is not safe for either of us alone. We go together but carefully. I have a shawl that will help me pass for Mexican from a distance. Keep your hat low. Act like travelers. Nothing suspicious. They left their rifles hidden in the brush and approached the town with only concealed weapons, Jake's pistol tucked under his vest, Kaya's knife hidden in her boot. Socorro's main street was exactly what Jake expected. Saloons, general store, a sheriff's office with a deputy dozing on the porch, livery stable, men lounging in the shade watching newcomers with idle curiosity. Rosa's cantina sat at the far end of the street, a small adobe building with faded paint and a sign that hung slightly crooked, not prosperous but still standing. That said something about the woman who ran it. They tied their horses and stepped inside. The cantina was dim, smelling of spilled beer and old smoke. A few patrons sat at rough wooden tables nursing drinks, playing cards. Behind the bar stood a woman who could only be Rosa Martinez, 40 years old, maybe 42. Strong features hardened by grief, eyes that had seen too much sorrow and learned to keep watching anyway. She looked up as they entered, and Jake saw her freeze for just a heartbeat before her professional mask slipped into place. "Welcome, travelers. What can I get you?" "Just water," Jake said. "And maybe a few minutes of your time, Mrs. Martinez, if you can spare it." The use of her name made her stiffen. Her eyes darted to the other patrons, checking if they were paying attention. Most were absorbed in their cards and drinks. She jerked her head toward a back room. "Storage room needs organizing. Perhaps you could help, senor." They followed her through a doorway into a small room stacked with barrels and crates. Rosa closed the door, then turned on them with fierce intensity. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" Kaya lowered her shawl. "My name is Kaya Red Feather. Sam Porter sent us. And a warrior named Nagi met you 3 years ago." Recognition and fear warred in Rosa's expression. "Nagi? Yes, after my husband died." She looked at Jake with suspicion. "And you?" "Jake Brennan, former Texas Ranger, now a wanted man because I tried to bring justice to Luther Blackwood." At Blackwood's name, Rosa's face went pale. "Keep your voice down. He has ears everywhere in this town." "We know." Kaya's voice was gentle, soothing. "We know he killed your husband. We know you have been collecting evidence against him. We need that evidence, Rosa. We are going to stop him, but we need your help." "Stop him!" Rosa laughed, but there was no humor in it, only despair. "No one stops Blackwood. He is too powerful, too rich. He owns the judge, the sheriff, half the businesses from here to Tucson." "He does not own you." Jake stepped forward. "You have been gathering proof for 3 years. Why, if you thought nothing could be done?" Rosa was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I could not let my husband's death mean nothing. Because I thought maybe someday someone would come. Someone brave enough or crazy enough to fight." "We are both," Kaya said. "Brave and crazy. But we are not alone. We have warriors. We have allies. We have a plan." Rosa's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "If I help you, and you fail, Blackwood will kill me. Slowly. He does not forgive. If you do nothing, you spend the rest of your life afraid." Jake's voice was soft but firm. "I know. I have been running for 6 months, every day looking over my shoulder, every night wondering if I will see morning. That is not living, Mrs. Martinez. That is just waiting to die." Rosa wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. Some decision crystallized behind her gaze. "Wait here." She disappeared into another room, returning minutes later with a metal box, old and dented, locked with a simple padlock. She opened it, and Jake saw it was stuffed with papers, letters, deeds, bank transfer records, a ledger of death written in black ink and fading pencil. Everything I could find. Rosa's voice was stronger now, determined. Land deals, payoffs to Judge Morrison, orders to remove homesteaders. There are names here, dates, amounts, 32 families, all murdered or driven off their land, all within 5 years. Jake took the box, feeling its weight. Not heavy in pounds, but in meaning. This was evidence, real evidence, the kind that could hang a man like Blackwood if presented properly. There is more, Rosa continued. The ledger. Blackwood keeps it in his office in Tucson. That has everything, every crime, every murder, every piece of corruption. But it is locked in a safe, guarded constantly. We know about the ledger. Kaya nodded. We will get it. But first we need to survive long enough to use this evidence. Is there anything else we should know? Jake asked. Any weakness in Blackwood's operation? Rosa thought for a moment. He is cautious, but he is also proud. He likes to show his power, to remind people who is in charge. She lowered her voice further. Every month he comes to Socorro, makes a circuit of the businesses he controls, collects his money. He will be here in 3 days. 3 days? Jake exchanged a glance with Kaya. That was not much time. And he never comes alone, Rosa warned. At least 10 men, armed, dangerous. A commotion from the main room interrupted them. Voices raised, chairs scraping against the floor. Rosa's eyes went wide. Hide! Now! Jake and Kaya pressed against the wall as Rosa stepped back into the cantina. Through the crack in the door, Jake could see what had caused the disturbance. 5 men had entered, all wearing guns, all moving with the confidence of those who knew the law would not touch them, and leading them was a man Jake had hoped never to see again, Virgil Cade. His half-brother looked older than Jake remembered, harder, lines carved into his face by violence and whiskey. But the eyes were the same, cold, calculating, always looking for an angle. Afternoon, Rosa, Virgil's voice drawled across the room. Heard you might have had some interesting visitors. An Apache woman and a man matching my brother's description. You seen anyone like that? Rosa's voice was steady. Many people come through here, senor. I do not pay much attention to faces. Virgil walked slowly through the cantina, studying each patron. That is a shame, because there is good money for information about Jake Brennan. $3,000. Enough for a woman like you to leave this place, start fresh somewhere safe. I have told you, I have seen no one. Virgil's hand shot out, grabbing Rosa's wrist. You are lying. I can smell lies, Mrs. Martinez, and you reek of them. In the storage room, Jake's hand went to his pistol. Kaya touched his arm, shaking her head. Not yet. Wait. But Jake could feel his control slipping, could feel the old rage building. That was his blood out there, his kin hurting an innocent woman. Then Virgil released Rosa and smiled. The expression held no warmth. No matter. If Jake is here, he will show himself soon enough. He always was predictable. Virgil raised his voice. You hear that, little brother? I know you are close. I can feel it. You cannot hide from me. We share blood. That means something. Jake's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Kaya leaned close, her lips nearly touching his ear. He is baiting you. Do not give him what he wants. She was right. Of course she was right. But knowing it and feeling it were different things. Virgil had always known exactly how to get under his skin. Virgil's men spread out through the cantina, searching, checking corners, looking behind the bar. Check the back, Virgil ordered. Every room. Jake drew his pistol. Kaya knocked an arrow on her bow. They positioned themselves on either side of the door. The door swung open. One of Virgil's men stepped through, gun drawn. He never saw Kaya. Her arm wrapped around his throat from behind, knife pressing against his jugular. Make a sound and you die, she whispered. Jake grabbed the man's gun, pressed his own pistol against his temple. How many more back here? Jake asked quietly. The man's eyes were wide with fear. Just me. The others are covering the front. Good. Jake looked at Kaya. Back door. Through the cellar. Rosa showed me when we came in. They moved quickly, dragging the captured man with them. Through a trap door in the floor. Down into a dark cellar that smelled of old wine and older secrets. Across packed earth. Up a ladder to a door that opened into the alley behind the cantina. Fresh air. Late afternoon light. And the sound of Virgil's voice still echoing from inside. They are not here. Spread out. Check the whole town. Jake and Kaya ran. They reached their horses just as shouts went up behind them. Mounted in seconds. Kaya wheeled her animal toward the edge of town. This way. There is a canyon. Hard to follow. Gunshots cracked. Bullets kicked up dust around their horses' hooves. Jake fired back, not aiming to kill, just a slow pursuit. More shots, the sound of hooves behind them. Virgil's men were following, but Kaya knew this land. She led them through narrow passages and hidden trails, reading the terrain like words on a page. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter. They rode hard until the sun began to set, until the horses were lathered and gasping, until they were certain they had lost their pursuers. Finally, Kaya pulled up in a small canyon ringed by red rock walls. We should be safe here. For now. Jake dismounted, legs shaking from the adrenaline crash. In his saddlebag, Rosa's box rattled with every movement, full of evidence, full of hope. That was too close, he said. Your brother. Kaya's voice was flat. He knew we would be there. He knows how I think, what I would do. Jake ran his hand through his hair. I told you. He knows the man I was. Then you need to stop being that man. Kaya moved to stand in front of him. Her eyes were intense, determined. You need to be unpredictable. Do things the old Jake would never do. Like what? Like trust me completely. Follow my lead without question. Let me take you places a white man has never gone. Jake looked at her. At the strength in her stance, the fire in her eyes, the absolute certainty that she could guide them through this. I already trust you, he said. Then prove it. From this moment, you are not a ranger, not a fugitive, not a man with a bounty on his head. She stepped closer. You are my partner, my equal, and together we will bring down Blackwood and everyone who serves him. Jake held out his hand. She took it. Partners, he said. Partners. Behind them, the sun sank below the canyon rim. Ahead, darkness gathered. But somewhere in that darkness, allies waited. Warriors willing to fight. A chance at justice that had seemed impossible just days ago. And in Jake's saddlebag, Rosa's evidence waited to be used. The hunt was not over. Virgil was still out there. Blackwood was still powerful. The odds were still against them. But they had taken the first step, and sometimes that was all that mattered. In Socorro, Virgil Cade stood in the middle of Rosa's empty cantina, surrounded by his men and the wreckage of their failed search. They got away, one of the men said, stating the obvious. I know they got away. Virgil's voice was dangerously calm. The question is, where they went. Rosa Martinez sat in a chair, hands bound behind her. Her face was bruised from where one of the men had struck her, but her eyes were defiant. I told you, I do not know anything. Virgil crouched down to her level. His smile was gentle, almost kind, which made it more terrifying than any snarl. Mrs. Martinez, we both know that is not true. You have been collecting evidence against Blackwood for years. My brother came here for that evidence, and now he has it. I hope he uses it to hang you all. Brave words. Virgil stood. Unfortunately, bravery does not protect you from what comes next. He turned to his men. Get word to Blackwood. Tell him they have the evidence. Tell him they are heading for the Apache camp in the Pinoleno Mountains. How do you know that? One man asked. Virgil's smile widened. Because that is where I would go. The Apache elder Takakota. He has been a thorn in Blackwood's side for years. If Jake wants an army, that is where he will find one. He walked to the door, pausing to look back at Rosa. As for you, Mrs. Martinez, Blackwood will want to have a conversation about your hobbies. I suggest you start thinking about what you are going to tell him. Rosa spat at his feet. Virgil laughed. I like her. She has spirit." He nodded to his men. "Keep her alive, for now." He stepped out into the fading light. The desert stretched before him vast and indifferent. Somewhere out there his brother was riding toward danger, toward a confrontation that had been building for 20 years. Virgil mounted his horse and turned toward Tucson. He had a report to make, and a trap to set. The Pinoleno Mountains rose from the desert floor like ancient sentinels, their peaks still holding the last gold of sunset while shadows pooled in the valleys below. Jake and Kaya had ridden through the night and most of the following day, pushing their horses as hard as they dared, putting distance between themselves and Virgil's hunters. Now, as the second evening approached, Kaya led them onto trails that Jake would have sworn did not exist. Paths that appeared only when you were standing directly on them. Routes that wound through rock formations and dense pine forests, invisible from above, impossible to track from behind. "How much farther?" Jake asked. His voice was rough from exhaustion. "We will reach the valley by nightfall." Kaya did not slow her pace. "My people will have seen us already. They watch every approach. And they will let us pass. They will let me pass." She glanced back at him. They will question." As if summoned by her words, two figures materialized from the forest ahead. Apache warriors, both young, both armed with rifles that looked well-maintained and ready. They wore a mix of traditional and practical clothing, buckskin and cotton, moccasins and boots. Their faces were hard, suspicious. Their rifles pointed directly at Jake. Kaya spoke in Apache, quick and firm. The warriors responded with skepticism, clear in their voices. Back and forth it went. A negotiation Jake could not follow but could read in body language and tone. These men did not trust him, did not want him in their camp, saw him as just another white man with a gun. Finally, one of the warriors lowered his rifle slightly and spoke to Jake in accented English. "Kaya Red Feather says you saved her life, says you fight against Blackwood." His eyes were hard as flint. "This true?" "It is true. Many white men say they fight for justice, then they kill us anyway." The warrior stepped closer. "Why should we believe you are different?" It was a fair question. Jake had no answer that would satisfy them, no proof beyond his word and Kaya's trust, so he did the only thing he could. Slowly, deliberately, he unloaded his rifle. Then he handed it to the warrior. Defenseless now, surrounded by men who had every reason to hate him. "Because I am putting my life in your hands," Jake said. "I am betting you are better men than the ones who killed Kaya's family, better than Blackwood, better than the people who have given you every reason to hate my kind." He paused. "I could be wrong. You could shoot me right here. But I do not think you will. I think Kaya's faith in you is well placed." The warrior looked at the rifle in his hands, then at Kaya, then back at Jake. Something shifted in his expression, not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of respect. He handed the rifle back. "I am Two Hawks." His voice was less hostile now. "If Kaya trusts you, we will let you live, for now." He gestured toward the path ahead. "Come, Takakota waits." The hidden valley appeared like a secret tucked between high peaks. Invisible from below, accessible only to those who knew the way. Maybe 15 wickiups scattered across the valley floor. Traditional Apache dwellings made of branches and hides. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near a stream. Elders sat in the shade working on crafts or simply watching the day pass. It looked peaceful. It looked like home. But Jake could see the armed warriors stationed at strategic points, the way every adult wore a weapon within reach. The underlying tension that said these people knew safety was an illusion. They were ready to fight, ready to run, ready to die if necessary. Takakota waited in the center of the camp, standing beside a fire that burned despite the afternoon warmth. He was older than Jake expected, maybe 63, 65. His face was weathered like ancient stone with eyes that missed nothing. A long scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from some long-ago battle. He wore traditional clothing beneath a cavalry officer's coat, the juxtaposition somehow fitting. A warrior who had fought the army now wearing its symbols as trophies. Kaya dismounted and approached him speaking in Apache. Her words were respectful but firm, not begging, asking as one warrior to another. Takakota listened without interruption. His eyes occasionally flicked to Jake, assessing, judging. When Kaya finished, Takakota was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke his English perfect, almost without accent. "Kaya Red Feather, daughter of my friend White Hawk." His voice was cold, measuring. "You bring a white man with a gun to our hidden place. A ranger, the same kind of man who killed my son 5 years ago. He is not a ranger anymore." Kaya's voice did not waver. "And he is not like the men who killed Little Fox. They all wear the same face to me." Takakota's eyes locked onto Jake. "Why should I trust this one?" Jake dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. He did not bow or scrape or try to placate. Takakota would see through that in a heartbeat. Instead, he met the elder's gaze with respect, but without submission. "You should not trust me," Jake said. "You have no reason to. But I am not here to ask for trust. I am here to offer my gun in a fight we both need to win." "Explain." "Luther Blackwood wants you dead, wants your land. He has already murdered Kaya's family, a dozen homesteader families, probably more." Jake gestured to the valley, the wickiups, the children playing by the stream. "He will come for this place eventually. You know it. I know it." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Question is, do we fight him separately and die, or do we fight him together and maybe, just maybe, win?" Takakota's expression did not change. "You speak of fighting together, of partnership between Apache and white men. I have heard these words before. They always end with Apache blood in the dirt and white men taking what they want. I am not asking you to trust white men." Jake kept his voice steady. "I am asking you to trust Kaya. She thinks this fight can be won. She thinks I can help. I am betting she is smarter than both of us combined." For the first time, something like amusement flickered in Takakota's eyes. He looked at Kaya, who stood straight and proud, waiting for his judgment. "You believe in this man." "I believe he fights for justice, not gold." Kaya's voice was firm. "I believe he sees me as a warrior, not a woman to protect or possess. That is rare. It is valuable. It is worth trusting." Takakota nodded slowly. "Your father taught you to read men well. If you say this one is different, I will consider it." He turned back to Jake. "But I do not give my trust easily. You will prove yourself first." "How?" "2 hawks." Takakota gestured to the warrior who had escorted them. "You will race him to the mesa top. Then you will fight him hand to hand." A thin smile crossed the elder's weathered face. "If you survive, we will talk." Jake glanced at Kaya, who gave him an encouraging nod. 2 Hawks was already moving toward the edge of camp, stretching his shoulders like a boxer before a fight. The man was younger, probably faster, and he knew this terrain like he knew his own heartbeat. This was going to hurt. "Fair enough," Jake said. The race was brutal. 2 Hawks set a punishing pace, running straight up the mountainside like gravity was optional. Jake pushed himself hard, lungs burning, legs screaming, but he managed to keep the warrior in sight. They reached the mesa top within seconds of each other, both breathing hard. 2 Hawks grinned. "You are faster than I expected, white man." "You are faster than I hoped," Jake gasped. Then they were fighting, and conversation became impossible. 2 Hawks was good, trained in wrestling and striking. His movements were economical, efficient. He came in low, trying for a takedown. Jake sprawled, using his weight to stay upright, then countered with a short punch to the ribs. They broke apart, circled. 2 Hawks feinted left, went right, caught Jake with a solid hit to the jaw. Stars exploded in Jake's vision, but he rolled with the punch, turned it into momentum, swept 2 Hawks' legs out from under him. The warrior went down, but did not stay down. He rolled, came up with a handful of dirt, threw it at Jake's eyes. Jake turned his head, mostly blocked it, but the distraction was enough. 2 Hawks was on him, strong hands grabbing for a chokehold. Jake drove his elbow back, felt it connect with something solid. 2 Hawks grunted, but did not let go. They grappled. Strength against strength. Technique against technique. Jake managed to slip the hold spin out, but Two Hawks was already adapting, already attacking from a new angle. It went on like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Neither man could gain a decisive advantage. Both were skilled, both were tough, both refused to quit. Finally, almost simultaneously, they each landed punches that sent the other stumbling backward. They stood there, swaying, bleeding from various cuts, breathing like bellows. Two Hawks wiped blood from his split lip. Then he started laughing. "Enough. You fight well, Jake Brennan. You fight better." Jake admitted tasting copper. "Glad you are on my side." Two Hawks offered his hand. Jake took it. They walked back down the mountain together, battered, but not beaten. And somehow that shared experience, that mutual respect earned through combat, created a bond that hours of talking never could have. Takakota was waiting when they returned. This time, when he looked at Jake, there was approval in his eyes. "You have courage, you have skill, and you do not quit when the fight turns hard." The elder nodded slowly. "These are good qualities in an ally." "Then we are allies." "We will talk." Which was not quite yes, but far better than no. "Come, sit, tell me your plan." They gathered in Takakota's wickiup as night fell over the valley. A dozen warriors and elders formed a circle around a small fire. Jake sat quietly while Kaya laid out the situation with brutal clarity. Blackwood's crimes, the ledger in Tucson, the need to gather evidence and witnesses, the plan to force Blackwood into a public confrontation where his guilt could not be hidden. The elders listened, asked questions, argued among themselves in Apache. Jake let Kaya speak for both of them. This was her people, her language, her culture. He was the outsider here, and the smartest thing he could do was recognize that. Finally, Takakota raised his hand for silence. "This plan is dangerous. Many could die." "Many are already dead." Kaya's voice was steady. "My family, the Thompsons, a dozen other families. How many more before we say enough? And if we fight, if we expose Blackwood, what changes?" An older woman spoke, her voice sharp with skepticism. "The white man's courts are not our friends. Even with evidence, even with witnesses, they may do nothing. Then we make sure the whole territory sees." Jake spoke up for the first time. "Make it so public, so undeniable that even corrupt judges cannot ignore it. Bring in newspapers, federal marshals from Santa Fe. Make Blackwood's crimes too big to bury." The woman turned her sharp gaze on him. "And who will believe an Apache and a wanted man? They will believe documents. They will believe Blackwood's own records. They will believe when we show them proof written in his own hand." Two Hawks leaned forward. "There is a woman in Socorro, Rosa Martinez. She has been collecting evidence against Blackwood for 3 years, since he killed her husband." "I know Rosa," another warrior said. "She is afraid, but she is brave. She might help." Takakota considered this. "So the plan becomes this. Go to Socorro, convince this woman to share her evidence, then use it to draw Blackwood into a trap where we can expose him publicly and take his ledger." "That is the core of it," Jake agreed. "It is a thin plan. Much can go wrong." "Yes," Kaya said simply. "But doing nothing is worse. Doing nothing is death, just slower." Takakota looked around the circle, reading faces, gauging support. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded. "We will help, but I send only volunteers. I will not order men to die for this." "I volunteer," Two Hawks said immediately. "And I," said another warrior named Nagi, older, maybe 40, with gray threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen more battles than he had lost. "We will need someone to stay here," Takakota said, "to protect the camp in case Blackwood attacks while we are gone. The old and the young cannot defend themselves." "I will stay," the skeptical older woman said. "My fighting days are behind me, but I can still shoot straight. Others will stay with me." The planning continued late into the night. Details hammered out, roles assigned. Jake found himself impressed by the efficiency. the way decisions were made through consensus rather than command. These people had been making life and death choices together for generations. They knew how to work as a unit. When the council finally broke up, Jake stepped outside the wickiup into the cool mountain air. The stars blazed overhead, bright and cold. Kaya found him there. "You did well today," she said quietly. "I got beaten by 2 hawks. But you kept fighting. That is what matters." She moved to stand beside him close enough that he could feel her warmth in the cooling air. "Takakota respects you now. That was not certain when we arrived. Your people are good warriors, strong, smart. They deserve better than what they have gotten." "Yes." Kaya's voice was soft. "We do." They stood in silence watching the stars wheel overhead. "There is something I should tell you," Jake said suddenly. "About Virgil. About why he hates me so much." Kaya waited, patient, listening. "We had the same father but different mothers. Mine died when I was young. Pa married Virgil's mother a year later, raised Virgil as his own." Jake shook his head slowly. "But Virgil always felt like second choice. Second best. That is not your fault." "Maybe not, but I did not help." Jake's voice was heavy with old regret. "I was so focused on becoming a ranger, on making Pa proud. I did not see how much Virgil was struggling, how much he needed someone to believe in him. And your father. Pa loved us both. I truly believe that, but he showed it differently." Jake paused. "When I got my ranger badge, Pa cried, actually cried, said it was the proudest day of his life. And Virgil saw that. Virgil saw everything, every smile Pa gave me, every word of praise, and he kept score." Jake's laugh was bitter. "The day Pa died, I was on the border, chasing bandits. By the time I got the news, Virgil had already buried him. Alone. You could not have known. I could have been there, should have been there." Jake turned to face her. "That is why Virgil hunts me. Not for the money, not even for Blackwood. He wants to prove that Pa was wrong, that he is the better man, the one who deserved to be loved." Kaya reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were warm against his cheek. "You cannot carry guilt for your brother's choices. He made his own path, just as you made yours. I know, but knowing and feeling are different things." "Yes, they are." She stepped closer, so close that he could see starlight reflected in her dark eyes. "Jake Brennan, you are a good man, flawed, haunted, carrying burdens that would crush weaker souls." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But good. Do not let your brother's hatred make you doubt that." Jake's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his cheek. "Kaya, do not speak. Not yet." She leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative. 2 wounded people reaching across the darkness for something real. Then it deepened into something fierce, something that spoke of loss and hope and the desperate need to hold on to anything good in a world that seemed determined to destroy it. When they finally broke apart, Kaya rested her forehead against his. "You are my man now, Jake Brennan." Her voice was fierce, certain. "Not because you saved me, not because I need you, because I choose you, because you are worthy of being chosen. And you are my woman." The words felt strange and absolutely right. Whatever the spirits have planned, we face it together. They held each other as the night deepened around them. 2 people who had found each other in the chaos of violence and loss, who had built something real from the ashes of their ruined lives. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but tonight they had this. The plan was set. In the morning they would divide their forces. 3 days later everything fell apart. They had split up according to plan. Jake and Kaya went to Fort Bowie with Nagi to make contact with Major Garrett and prepare the ground for a federal hearing. 2 Hawks returned to Sam's ranch to help coordinate with the settlers Sam had been gathering. The plan was working. Major Garrett had agreed to host the hearing. Word had been sent to Marshal Daniel Hayes in Santa Fe. Rosa's evidence was being compiled and organized. Then the messenger came. He rode into Fort Bowie on a lathered horse, barely able to stay in the saddle. Blood soaked through his shirt from a wound in his side. "They attacked," he gasped as Jake caught him. "Last night, Blackwood's men, 30 of them, maybe more." Jake's blood went cold. "Sam's ranch," the messenger nodded weakly. "Burned. The people scattered. Sam—" He coughed and blood flecked his lips. "Sam went down fighting. Do not know if he made it." Kaya was already moving, gathering weapons, preparing horses. Her face was stone. "We have to go back." "Kaya, wait." Jake grabbed her arm. "If Blackwood attacked Sam's ranch, he knows where we are. He knows what we are planning. This could be a trap." "I do not care if it is a trap." Fire blazed in her eyes. "Our people are hurt. Our ally may be dying. We do not abandon them." She was right. Of course she was right. Jake turned to Nagi. "Stay here. Make sure the hearing happens. We will bring back whoever survived." The old warrior nodded. "Ride fast. Fight hard. I will hold the fort." They rode through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. The miles disappeared beneath thundering hooves as they raced toward the smoking ruins of their hopes. Dawn found them approaching Sam's ranch from the east, or what was left of it. The house was a blackened skeleton. The barn had collapsed into a pile of smoking timbers. Bodies lay scattered across the yard. Some wore the rough clothes of Blackwood's hired guns. Others wore the simpler garments of settlers who had come to fight for justice and found only death. "No." Kaya's voice broke on the word. "No, no, no." Jake dismounted and moved through the carnage, searching, checking faces, hoping against hope. He found Sam propped against a water trough at the edge of the property. The old ranger was still breathing, but barely. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandage around his chest. "Sam." Jake knelt beside him. "I am here. Hold on." Sam's eyes fluttered open. A ghost of a smile crossed his battered face. "Took you long enough." His voice was barely a whisper. "Thought you might miss the fun." "How bad?" "Bad enough." Sam coughed weakly. "Bullet in the chest. Probably nicked something important. Been bleeding since midnight." Kaya appeared beside them with water and bandages she had salvaged from the wreckage. Her hands were steady as she worked on Sam's wound, but tears tracked silently down her cheeks. "The others?" Jake asked. "Scattered. Most got away when the shooting started." Sam winced as Kaya tightened the bandage. "2 hawks got them out, led them into the mountains. Boys got good instincts." "And Blackwood's men?" "Gone. Hit and run. Burned everything and disappeared." Sam's eyes focused on Jake with sudden intensity. "But before they left, one of them delivered a message. Said Blackwood knows about the hearing at Fort Bowie. Said he is coming. With 50 men. Plans to end this once and for all." Jake's jaw tightened. "Then we will be ready for him." "No." Sam grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength. "Listen to me. You cannot fight 50 guns with what you have. You need to run. Take Kaya. Take the evidence. Get to Santa Fe. Find another way. I am not leaving you." "You are, because I am ordering you to." The old ranger's voice hardened. "Last order I will ever give you, Jake Brennan. Go. Finish this. Make all of it mean something." "Sam. Go." His grip loosened. "Make me proud, son." Kaya touched Jake's shoulder. "We need to move. 2 hawks is gathering the survivors. We should find them, regroup." Jake looked at Sam, at the man who had taught him what it meant to be a ranger, what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself. "I will come back for you." "I know you will." Sam smiled weakly. "Now get out of here, before I start getting sentimental." They left him with water and bandages and a loaded rifle. It was all they could do. The survivors had to come first. The mission had to continue. As they rode away, Jake looked back one last time. Sam raised a weak hand in farewell. Then the smoke and distance swallowed him. 2 hawks had done well. They found him and the survivors camped in a narrow canyon 3 miles from the ruined ranch. 25 people, settlers and Apache together, nursing wounds and sharing what little food they had salvaged. The mood was grim, defeated, These people had come to fight for justice and had been ambushed in the night by overwhelming force. "We lost," one of the settlers said flatly. "Blackwood won." "No." Kaya's voice cut through the despair like a blade. "We have not lost. We are still alive. We still have the evidence, and Fort Bowie still stands. With 50 of Blackwood's guns coming to burn it down." "Then we get there first." Jake stepped forward. "We get there, we present our evidence, and we let Major Garrett and Marshal Hayes handle Blackwood's army." "How?" Two Hawks asked. "The main routes are being watched. Blackwood has men everywhere." Takakota stepped out of the crowd. He had arrived with a handful of warriors sometime during the night, drawn by the smoke and the sound of gunfire. "There is another way," the elder said. "A path known only to my people, the path of our ancestors." "Where does it lead?" "Through the mountains, under them in some places. It will bring us to Fort Bowie from the north where no one will expect us." Takakota's eyes were hard. "But it is dangerous, difficult. Many of you may not survive the journey." "What choice do we have?" Kaya asked. None. They all knew the answer without speaking it. That night they prepared for the journey. The wounded who could not travel were left hidden in the canyon with supplies and guards. The rest gathered what weapons and provisions they could carry. Before they left, Jake found a moment alone with Takakota. "Thank you," he said, "for helping us, for trusting us. I know this is not your fight." Takakota studied him for a long moment. "You are wrong, Jake Brennan. This is exactly our fight. We have been running, hiding, dying slowly for years. You offer us a chance to stand, to be heard, to matter." The old warrior's voice was fierce. "Whatever happens this day will be remembered. The day Apache and white men fought together against a common enemy. Even if we lose, especially if we lose." Takakota smiled grimly. "Legends are born from noble defeats as often as from victories. Either way, our children will tell stories of this time." They moved out before dawn, a ragged column of 40 people threading their way into the mountains. Takakota led his aged body, somehow finding strength for the brutal terrain. Behind him came warriors and settlers, Apache and white, united by desperation and the fading hope of justice. The path was everything Takakota had promised: dangerous, hidden, known only to those who had walked it for generations. They climbed through narrow passes where a single misstep meant death. They crawled through caves that seemed to press in from all sides. They forded ice-cold streams and scrambled up cliff faces that offered no mercy. But they kept moving. On the second night, as they camped in a hidden valley, Jake and Kaya sat together apart from the others. "If tomorrow goes badly," Jake began, "do not say that. Kaya, I need you to know something." She turned to face him. In the firelight, her eyes held a mixture of fear and determination that Jake had come to love. "You made me remember why I became a ranger in the first place," he said quietly. "Not for the badge, not for the law, but to protect people who cannot protect themselves. You reminded me that there are things worth fighting for, worth dying for." "Jake, let me finish." He took her hand. "Whatever happens at Fort Bowie, I want you to know that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me back my purpose. You gave me hope when I had none left." Kaya was silent for a moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him softly. "You are my man, Jake Brennan," she whispered against his lips, "and I am your woman. Whatever the spirits have planned, we face it together. That is all that matters." They held each other through the night, drawing strength from closeness, preparing for whatever dawn would bring. Fort Bowie appeared on the afternoon of the third day. They emerged from the mountains to find the American flag still flying over the parade ground, Major Garrett's soldiers still drilling in the heat, Marshal Daniel Hayes waiting at the gate with reinforcements from Santa Fe. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. They had made it. Against all odds, they had made it. "Mr. Brennan." Hayes stepped forward to greet them. "We were beginning to worry. We had some trouble on the way." Jake gestured to the ragged column behind him. "But we brought witnesses, and we brought evidence." Hayes nodded grimly. "Then let us put them to use. Blackwood arrived an hour ago. 30 men. He is demanding we release him and drop all charges." "Only 30, Kaya frowned. The messenger said 50. Perhaps he could not gather as many as he hoped, or perhaps he is saving some for another purpose. Hayes led them toward the main building. "Either way, he is here, and he is not happy." "There is more good news," Hayes added. "Rosa Martinez, the woman from Socorro. Marshal deputies found her being held in Blackwood's warehouse 2 days ago. She is here, ready to testify." Jake felt a weight lift from his chest. Rosa had survived. Her evidence and her voice would be heard. The hearing was set for the following morning. Major Garrett had transformed the parade ground into a makeshift courtroom. Benches for witnesses, a platform for the judge, space for observers. The American flag hung behind it, all symbol of the law they were trying to uphold. That night Jake and Kaya stood on the wall of the fort, looking out at the desert under starlight. "Are you ready?" she asked. "For the hearing, I think so." "For what comes after?" Kaya turned to face him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, our lives will never be the same." Jake took her hands in his. "I know, but I would rather face uncertainty with you than safety alone." She smiled. The first real smile he had seen since the attack on Sam's ranch. "When this is over," she said, "there is a valley in the mountains, hidden, beautiful. My grandmother showed it to me when I was a child. I always dreamed of building a home there." "Are you asking me something?" "I am telling you something." Her eyes met his. "Wherever you go after tomorrow, I go too. That is my choice. That is my promise." Jake pulled her close, held her tight. "Then let us make sure we have a tomorrow worth living." Morning came clear and bright. Luther Blackwood arrived at precisely 10 o'clock, flanked by his lawyers and his armed guards. He moved like a king surveying his domain. Expensive suit, silver hair gleaming in the sun, confident, arrogant, utterly certain of his invincibility. His eyes swept over the assembled crowd, paused on Kaya, on Takakota, on Jake. A small smile crossed his face. He was not afraid. He should have been. "Marshal Hayes," Blackwood's voice dripped with false courtesy. "Major Garrett, I received your subpoena. I am here to clear my name of these ridiculous accusations." "Then let us begin," Hayes said coldly. What followed was 4 hours of testimony that would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. Witness after witness took the stand, telling their stories, speaking their truth. Rosa Martinez, her voice shaking but steady, described how Blackwood's men had beaten her husband to death in the street. A settler named John Cooper told how his family had been burned out, his daughter killed in the fire. An Apache woman named Nasha spoke through a translator about the night Kaya's camp was destroyed. Through it all, Blackwood sat with an expression of bored contempt, occasionally whispering to his lawyers, never showing a crack in his armor. Then Kaya took the stand. She spoke clearly, precisely. Her voice never wavered as she described the night her family died, the screams, the gunfire, the smell of burning flesh. "You gave the order." Her eyes locked onto Blackwood. "I heard you. You told your men, burn them out. I want this land. Those were your words. I will hear them until the day I die." Blackwood's lawyer rose. "Objection. This witness is Apache. Their testimony is not recognized in territorial courts." "This is federal jurisdiction," Major Garrett said coldly from his position at the judge's table. "I recognize all testimony from credible witnesses. Continue, Miss Redfeather." Kaya continued, laying out not just the crime, but the pattern. 12 families, all with land Blackwood wanted, all dead or driven off within a span of years. She produced the documents from Rosa's box, one by one, each one another nail in Blackwood's coffin. The audience watched in growing horror as the scope of the crimes became clear. Soldiers who had thought they were protecting settlers realized they had been protecting a mass murderer. Townspeople who had admired Blackwood's success saw the blood his money was built on. Finally, Marshal Hayes stood. "Luther Blackwood, I have here warrants for your arrest on charges of murder conspiracy to commit murder fraud bribery of public officials and theft of federal land." His voice was iron. "How do you plead?" For the first time, Blackwood's composure cracked. His face went red, then white. "This is absurd. I have done nothing wrong. These people are liars. All of them." "Then you will have opportunity to prove that at trial," Hayes said. "But for now you are under arrest." Blackwood turned to his men. Jake saw the calculation in his eyes. 30 armed men against the fort's soldiers. Could he fight his way out? Do not. Major Garrett's voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "Order your men to stand down, Mr. Blackwood. You are on a military installation. If they draw weapons, my soldiers will cut them down, and you will hang for their deaths as well as all the others." The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then Blackwood reached for a hidden pistol. "I will not die in a cell." Everything happened at once. Blackwood's gun came up aimed at Kaya. Jake lunged to shield her. A shot rang out, but not from Blackwood. Virgil Cade stood in the doorway, his smoking pistol still raised. Blackwood crumpled, clutching his shoulder where the bullet had struck. Jake stared at his brother in shock. "Virgil!" The bounty hunter walked forward slowly. His face was tired, older than Jake remembered, but his eyes held something new, something that looked almost like peace. "Pa always said Brennans protect the innocent." Virgil's voice was rough. "Took me a long time to remember that." He reached Blackwood, who was writhing on the ground, and kicked the fallen pistol away. "Been following you for weeks, little brother. Watching you fight. Watching you risk everything for people who are not even your kind." Virgil shook his head. "Made me remember some things I had forgotten." "Virgil, do not." Virgil held up his hand. "I am not looking for forgiveness. I have done things that cannot be forgiven, but I can do this one thing right." He turned to Marshal Hayes. "I have testimony about Blackwood's operations, names, dates, locations of bodies he ordered buried. I will tell you everything I know." Hayes nodded slowly. "And in exchange, I am turning myself in. Yuma Prison. Whatever sentence the law decides." Virgil looked at Jake one last time. "Tell Pa's grave I finally made him proud. Just once. At the end." Guards took Blackwood away, still screaming threats and curses. His remaining men outside the fort, seeing their leader in chains, scattered into the desert rather than face the army's guns. Virgil went quietly, his head held high. Jake watched his brother disappear through the gates. They would never see each other again. But somehow in that moment of sacrifice, they had finally become brothers. The trial concluded 3 days later. With Virgil's testimony added to the mountain of evidence, there was no defense Blackwood's lawyers could offer. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. Sentence: death by hanging. As the verdict was read, Jake sat in the front row with Kaya's hand in his. Around them, settlers and Apache alike wept with relief and joy. Justice. Real justice. After so many years of suffering, it had finally come. Marshal Hayes cleared Jake's name officially. The warrant for his arrest was voided. Sheriff Wade's death was ruled self-defense. Jake Brennan was a free man. That night there was celebration at Fort Bowie, soldiers and civilians, Apache and white, all drinking together, laughing together, marveling that they had actually won. But Jake slipped away from the festivities. He had one more thing to do. He found Sam in the infirmary recovering from his wounds. A patrol from Fort Bowie had found him the day after the attack, barely alive but still fighting. The Army doctors had worked through the night to save him. The old ranger was propped up in bed looking tired but alive. "You made it," Sam said as Jake entered. "We all made it, because of you." Jake sat beside the bed. "The hearing is over. Blackwood is going to hang." "I heard." Sam smiled weakly. "Also heard about your brother. That took guts what he did. He is going to prison. Better than the alternative, for both of you." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Sam, I do not know how to thank you. For everything. For training me. For believing in me. for fighting beside us even when it cost you everything." Sam reached out and gripped Jake's hand. "You want to thank me. Live well. Build something good. Be the man I always knew you could be." His eyes glistened. "That is all the thanks I need. I will try." "You will do more than try." Sam settled back against his pillows. "Now get out of here. Go find that woman of yours. Start your life." Jake stood, paused at the door. "I love you, Sam, like a father." "I know, son." Sam's voice was thick. "I know." The hidden valley was everything Kaya had promised. Nestled between mountain peaks protected from the world, beautiful beyond words. A stream ran through its center, clear and cold. Pine trees climbed the slopes. Wildflowers dotted the meadows with color. Jake stood outside the wickiup they had built together. Traditional Apache construction, but sized for two people learning to build a life. Kaya emerged, and his breath caught as it always did when he saw her. She was more beautiful now than the day they met. Softer somehow, more at peace. And there was a new roundness to her belly. The promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. "Are you ready?" she asked. "For fatherhood?" Jake laughed. "Not even close." "Good. Neither am I." She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the valley. "But we will learn together." Jake wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I received a letter from Yuma," he said quietly. "From Virgil." "What did it say?" "He heard about the baby. Said—" Jake's voice caught. "Said I will be a better father than he ever could have been. Said some chains we choose and some we break. He is glad I broke mine." Kaya reached up to touch his face. "He found his own peace, in his own way." "I know." Jake kissed her forehead. "I just wish things could have been different. The past cannot be changed, only honored." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Our child will grow up knowing both worlds, Apache and white, warrior and peacemaker. That is our gift to the future." "That is your gift," Jake said. "You taught me that there is still something worth fighting for, worth living for." "We taught each other," she smiled. "That is what partners do." A rider appeared at the valley's entrance, a messenger from Fort Bowie. "Marshal Hayes sends word," the young soldier reported. "There are other ranches having trouble with land grabbers, other families being threatened. He wants to know if the former Ranger Brennan might be willing to help." Jake looked at Kaya. "What do you think?" "I think this land still needs people willing to protect it." Her eyes sparkled. "And our child will need to know what kind of man his father is." Jake nodded to the messenger. "Tell Hayes I will help, but not until after the baby comes. Some things are more important than justice." The soldier smiled and rode away. Jake and Kaya stood together as the sun began to set, painting the valley in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, children played. Apache and settler children together, learning each other's games, speaking each other's languages. A new community rising from the ashes of the old. "Are you happy?" Kaya asked softly. Jake thought about the question, thought about everything he had lost, everything he had gained, the price he had paid and the rewards he had received. "Yes," he said finally. "For the first time in my life, I think I really am." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Good. So am I." The stars came out one by one as darkness settled over the valley. Two people stood together watching the sky, holding the future between them. Behind them, the past lay buried with the dead. Ahead, life waited to be lived. And somewhere in the great mystery that connected all things, the spirits smiled. Because one honest choice made in a moment of desperation had changed everything. A wanted man had found redemption. A grieving woman had found love. And justice, long delayed, had finally been served. This is how legends are born, not from perfect heroes or easy victories, but from broken people who choose to stand anyway, who fight even when the odds are impossible, who love even when their hearts have been shattered, who believe in tomorrow even when today is dark. Jake Brennan was not a perfect man. He had made mistakes, carried regrets, done things he wished he could undo. But when he heard a scream in the wilderness, he rode toward it instead of away. And that single choice changed everything. Let me ask you something. What choices are you facing today? What screams are you hearing that you might be tempted to ignore? What battles are you afraid to fight because the odds seem too great? Remember this story. Remember that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Remember that it is never too late to choose a different path. And remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to quit. If this story meant something to you, I hope you will share it with someone who needs to hear it. If it touched your heart, let me know in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Join us next time for another tale of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring human spirit. Because one honest choice can turn a fugitive into a hero, turn enemies into allies, turn the darkest night into the brightest dawn. And it is never too late to make that choice. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never stop believing that justice is possible, even when the whole world tells you otherwise.